Hello, everyone. Today's guest is Nick Joseph. A quick background about Nick. Nick has been an advisor to the Cayman Islands government on immigration, and he has even written some of the Cayman's law on immigration. Therefore, Nick is probably by far the most knowledgeable person on the best ways to secure residency in the Cayman Islands. Nick, welcome, and thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Nick, first of all, I want to start by saying that you've built quite a reputation in the Cayman Islands. I traveled a while back to Cayman to prepare for the Cayman Island event for our upcoming Mavericks event, actually in the Cayman Islands. And literally everybody I spoke with knew who you were by name. And some of the people even mentioned that, you know what, if there is any mess up that an immigration attorney is going to make with your residency, Nick is the go-to person to fix that problem. Probably because you were the person who even wrote some of that law, so you know pretty much every loophole that there is to fix issues.
I should clarify, I participated in the writing of earlier versions of it and have been teaching at the law school for about 15 years. So that's where that expertise developed.
That's great. Well, it definitely all the Caymanians probably know who you are, but most of our audience probably doesn't know who you are because they are not from Cayman. So I thought that perhaps we start with a bit of background on your experience and the type of services that you do in the Cayman Islands.
Sure, absolutely. Many of you are detecting perhaps an English accent. It's an artificial accent. It was kicked into me when I was a teenager, having been sent to boarding school in the UK. I've lived in the Cayman Islands since I was 2 years old. I was originally from Jamaica. And the population of the Cayman Islands has grown very rapidly. It's now approaching 100,000 people. There were only 10,000 people here when I was a child. It has increased dramatically in its sophistication and is recognizing its position as the geographic center of the Americas. We are literally halfway between Sao Paulo and Vancouver, between New York and Santiago. And so from a time zone perspective and geographically, we are recognizing ourselves as an ideal location in which and from which to conduct international business. I became a lawyer about 30 years ago and was actually working in the trust field. In the process, many of my higher net worth clients started to express an interest in making the Cayman Islands their home, not just a place to do business. And so I developed a practice that increasingly started to help them to emigrate to the Cayman Islands and to remain here. And a couple of years ago, I realized that I didn't have to be surrounded by a law firm to do that anymore. And so established a residency consultancy business where it's my privilege to help add more people to the Cayman community. And I consider it an act of patriotism in many respects, because what we are doing inevitably is helping to build these islands even stronger than they would be without many of the people who choose to come and live with us.
That's a very interesting perspective. You have a lot of experience dealing with people, foreigners that have established themselves in the Cayman Island, both as a lawyer and as a citizen of the Cayman Island. If you had to define the different archetypes of the people that decide to make Cayman their home, how would you describe them? Or simply put, what type of people come to the Cayman Islands and why? What's their motivation?
We have more than 50,000 foreign nationals living and working here at the moment. Of those, the great majority, more than 15,000, are Jamaican nationals. They would tend to be here seeking opportunity to work in a vibrant construction and tourism industry. We have large numbers of Indians who come here similarly attracted by the tourism industry, the retail industry, and more they are becoming involved in the technology industry. For the most part, though, our origins were as a banking center. We have large numbers of Canadians and Australians and New Zealanders, South Africans, Brits who work in that field and have created a thriving, booming, world-leading financial services center, a place from which and through which international business and commerce has been operating very well. And then more recently, on that foundation of a tourism destination with a sophisticated financial services industry and correspondingly sophisticated technology, communications, etc., we have seen the C-suite of businesses that can be conducted anywhere in the world choosing to come and establish a presence here to operate international businesses, usually online, from within the Cayman Islands. So, and those people tend to be North Americans for the most part, but we're also having people from throughout Europe coming and joining us here, and increasingly also Brazil.
So 138 nationalities you mentioned before are living in the Cayman Islands. I understand that one of the pathways to obtain residency there is to come under a work permit, so get a job.
Yep, that's right. You can either become employed by an existing trading entity. There's a well-rehearsed process by which that company would apply for permission to employ you. In doing so, it would generally have to satisfy the Cayman Islands government that there is no Caymanian being disadvantaged by that job. There's no unemployed Caymanian that can do or would do or wants to do that job. And those work permits can be renewed for up to 9 years. And people can live here and upon meeting various criteria, have their families be here with them, go to school, etc. And that's one path. But increasingly, people are using two special economic zone type arrangements. One is called Cayman Enterprise City. The other is called Tech Cayman, which can provide the same access to work permits, but on a much more beneficial basis without the vetting of the local jobs market. If you wish to incorporate your own company and conduct business that fits within one of the parks, the answer will be yes, provided you can pass the reasonable background checks that are required.
Okay, and you're mentioning this because for the local businesses based in Cayman, that want to hire somebody from abroad, they need to first prove, as far as I know, that they couldn't find a qualified Caymanian to do the job, and therefore they need to import a foreign workforce, right? That's
yes.
why.
Yes. And it's despite the fact that we have an overwhelming number of foreign nationals living here, there is great peace and tranquility and mutual respect in the community, because of these systems, the Caymanian people know that no foreigner is competing with them for a position. And there are very, very few Caymanians. We just had our election last week, and only 18,000 people chose to vote. I think there were 25,000 people who were eligible to vote. So it's a very small number of people relative to the size of our economy and the range of employment opportunities that exist here.
Right. And yet, just to make a distinction for people that are listening to this, so Cayman Islands, in order to give a gateway for people that want to reside to the island, but don't necessarily need a job, but they have their own business, they put together this free zones, the two free zones, right? I believe CEC, Cayman Enterprise City, was the first one, whereby you can set up a legal entity that acts as an offshore company. But I know that the catch here is that you are not allowed to sell services to the local Caymanians, right? So you can only operate the business from within the free zone, but you're not supposed to sell services to the local Caymanians. Is this correct?
Yeah, that's correct. We divided our economy back in the early 1970s in two. We created what we describe as the exempt economy, that does not compete locally and the regular economy that does compete locally. The exempt economy can compete anywhere on Earth except the Cayman Islands. And that actually works very well because we are amongst the smallest markets that there are in the world. There's only at maximum 100,000 people here. So there's another several billion people that you can trade with, and that seems to work perfectly fine for international business, for IT business, for marketing, for all of those sorts of things, accounting services, all kinds of things operate very well on that basis.
Out of curiosity, how does the government check nowadays with the whole information age? How can you be sure, even as an owner, that the Caymanian is not going to buy my service?
We have very light touch regulation on that sort of thing here. I think that it would be word of mouth. It's a small place, and even then, the government has relaxed around the edges of it to say that provided the great majority of your customer base is exterior to the islands, then from time to time they will permit some work to be done locally.
Okay, so focusing on I think the CEC was the first free zone, if I'm not mistaken. And could you tell us a little bit more about how does it work? How do I set up the business? How do I get residency by setting up the business there?
Sure. They have been in operation, I would guess, for around 15 years now. They have already welcomed and have operating within the islands some 400 companies, which is a testament to their success. It's a tried and tested regime with a clear regulatory framework within which it operates. They are, if truth be told, probably best described as real estate developers. They rent real estate in the form of a serviced office to a specific group authorized to operate from within their regime. Against that background, they have invited, I'm sorry, I think we lost signal for a little while. Against that background, they will allow any entity whose primary business is in technology, communications, transportation, including aviation and shipping, or publishing, to operate from within the special economic zone. They have a range of offerings. The least expensive is what is known as a flexi presence, whereby they will charge approximately $16,000 a year, in return for which you will get a trade license, a work visa, for a visa that allows you and your immediate family to live in the Cayman Islands, and access to full range of facilities that you would need to operate your business. On top of that, you would have to incorporate and maintain a special type of Cayman Islands exempt company that costs about another $4,000 a year. And so for around 20,000 United States dollars a year, you and your family can reside in the Cayman Islands and you can operate your business freely from within the islands. Should you wish to grow your business and start employing more people, you are free to add as many people as you like. The price for each additional person becomes less and less and less, depending on what you want to do and the type of office facilities that you would like to have.
Okay. As somebody that is a business owner and I hire myself on the company that I set up in the Cayman Island, that gives me the right to reside to the Cayman Island for that year, let's say. And I understand that after 9 years, I think we move on to applying to permanent residency and then ultimately citizenship. We will get there, but before that, I wanted to ask. My immediate family can. By the way, important thing: I don't have to reside in the free zone area. No, I can reside anywhere.
You can live anywhere in the islands. Yes.
Okay, and all my immediate family can come with me just because I have a work permit associated with that company incorporated in the CEC. Is that correct?
That is correct. They will have to have local health insurance. Children will be expected to attend school. Those schools will likely be private schools. But those are the sorts of sort of very normal expectations that are placed on people.
And is it possible that I set up the company, I hire myself there, but I might not spend, let's say, more than 3 months per year in the Cayman Islands? Would that impact my application or residency in any way?
No, it shouldn't from a Cayman perspective. Cayman's interest is knowing that Cayman is your home. But Cayman doesn't need Cayman to be your only home. Many people live very international lives. I certainly, with the proximity of where we are, I have some jealousy for all the North Americans that go to northern Canada in July and August for a couple of months to sit by a beautiful lake. I love Europe in June and try to get there when I can for that. And so increasingly people are more and more mobile and using Cayman, the Cayman Islands, as a base from which to live their international lives.
Oh, I thought that that was brilliant and an important point that I wanted to confirm with you. So potentially, as long as I stay less than 6 months per year in Canada or any jurisdiction that automatically transforms me as in a tax residency by staying more than 6 months. So if I stay less than 6 months in any other country and I have this residency in the Cayman Islands, I can potentially benefit from Cayman Islands tax-free jurisdiction whilst being able to travel and live in the Cayman Islands, but also outside the Cayman Islands as well. Is this correct?
Potentially, yes, but I would urge that everybody be extremely cautious. Different countries have different tax rules, and one of the basic principles that they're starting to adopt, I understand, is that you live in the place where you spend the most time. So above all, if anybody was seeking to be semi-nomadic, I would urge that they make sure that they spend at least one more day in the Cayman Islands every year than they do in any one other place.
Excellent point. Great. Okay, so Cayman Enterprise City is one pathway, is one free zone, and then there is another free zone that you mentioned, Tech Cayman. What's the difference?
Tech Cayman, yes, that is still more in development. It certainly has several corporations operating from within it. It appears to be better suited to larger entities or entities that are going to seek venture capital in what they're doing. They are limited to companies operating within the technology space. They have been, by all appearances, very successful. There are some larger corporations that have come and joined them and are operating within that environment. They are able to offer a fast track on work permits for appropriate companies that are operating within their regime. And there is an abatement of work permit fees that is of great benefit to the employers concerned, particularly for the first 4 years of the operation of a startup. They are doing what they can, working hand in hand with the Cayman Islands government to make sure that our economy is fully diversified and that we most importantly become a recognized tech hub through which the next phase of human evolution can be operated.
Okay, so the main differentiation is that it's focused on technology, right? And the second one you mentioned, fast track to work permits. What is the typical timeline? What do they do differently then?
They would expect to have you operational within about 8 weeks. Is the indication they are giving to me. I have almost no involvement with persons that are joining Tech Cayman or indeed Cayman Enterprise City because both operate a very effective concierge service effectively. So all I do is make the introduction. And since I don't get any complaints and I see people smiling in the supermarkets and coming up to me and thanking me, I'm pretty confident it all works very well.
Okay. Okay, so from your perspective, it's just as good as a path to secure residency or to set up operations in Tech Cayman as it is with CEC.
Absolutely. There are some things that will benefit people depending on their size and scale. One of the advantages that Tech Cayman can offer is that there is no restriction on where you can have your office space. And that is attractive to some people. I would say that Tech Cayman does tend to be more expensive than Cayman Enterprise City.
Okay. So far we discussed about getting yourself a job with an existing trading entity in the Cayman Islands as a path to residency. The other option is to set up an entity with the first free zone, which is Cayman Enterprise City, and hire yourself on that company. And the third one is using Tech Cayman, but that's mostly for the large corporates. Are there any other pathways to reside in the Cayman Islands?
Absolutely. I would preface it by saying that those three options that we've already discussed are all subject to a 9-year term limit. We have subscribed to the European Convention on Human Rights and all of the principles that are enshrined in that, and these include a right to private and family life. We accept that if people live here for a very long time, they will become a part of this soil. And we are a small place with lots of people trying to move here. So we have to make sure that we can keep control over our immigration. And accordingly, we require people to leave the Cayman Islands after they have been here for 9 years in order that they don't establish an independent right to live here. However, anybody that has been here for 8 years is free to apply for permanent residence under a point system. Points are awarded based on education, income, community involvement, charitable giving, nationality of origin, because we want diversity, age, health, all sorts of things. And the point system is readily achievable for people who plan for it. And so those persons can then transition into permanent residence with the right to work and remain forever. They will have a path to citizenship. Our citizenship is something called British Overseas Territories citizenship. And when somebody has British Overseas Territories citizenship, they can also then apply for full British citizenship and so end up getting 2 passports if they are prepared to put in the time and meet the criteria. There are others who don't want to work here, in particular retirees, and we can arrange residential certificates for persons who are simple retirees. In general terms, those persons would have to invest 1 million Cayman Islands dollars in developed residential real estate, so a little cottage on the beach, and prove that they have $120,000 a year of income without needing to work in the Cayman Islands. And then in return for $20,000 as a single payment, the government will issue a 25-year residency certificate to that individual so they can live here year-round, come and go as they wish, treat the Cayman Islands as their home. Again, though, ideally suited only for retirees. There is another alternative based on investment, whereby the investment required at the moment is 2 million Cayman Islands dollars in developed real estate. It doesn't have to be residential. You can buy an office building, you can buy a home, you can buy a condo. And the government asks for $100,000 as a fee. If you meet the requirements, they will give you permanent residence right away, to which the right to work can be added. Large numbers of people are currently coming here and availing themselves of that opportunity in particular, because as little as 5 years after they come here, they can get the citizenship. And then we have a different nationality called being Caymanian that you can apply for once you've had the citizenship for 5 years. It's quite good to be Caymanian. Not only do you have all the democratic rights, etc., but you have total freedom in the economy. You can own what you want. You can work where you want. You don't have to pay fees to the government, etc. So those are another two options. In addition, to help C-suite executives, there are 25-year work permits available that you can arrange at the beginning, but I tend not to recommend those to anybody. It makes much more sense, ends up being much more cost effective for somebody instead to undertake a work permit and then transition to permanent residence, whether through investment or under the point system in due course.
Very interesting. I wanted to circle back to the point system that you mentioned before, because you said that you can plan ahead to make sure that you qualify for the amount of points necessary in order to get the citizenship after the 8 years.
Yeah. Yeah.
Are there specific areas? I mean, what are the points, most points given for, or how do people plan for that?
Sure.
What do they have to do?
Well, you will be able to determine from the outset whether the nationality that you are a representative of is less than 5% of the population on work permits in the Cayman Islands. So, for example, Jamaicans and Filipinos are more than 20% of the work permits. Indians are at about 6%, and Brits at around 6%. So, because Jamaicans and Filipinos are more than 20%, they get 0 points for their demographics. Indians and Brits get 5 points for their demographics. And right now, everybody else gets 10 points. So if you're Brazilian or Russian or Italian, you know you're going to have 10 points right at the beginning. Then you get points for your education. A bachelor's degree will get you 12 points. You get points for, if you get a master's degree, you'll get 15 points. If you have a professional qualification, you get 15 points. If you have 10 years or more of experience, you'll get 10 points. If you are aged between 35 and 45, you will get 10 points. If you're younger than that, you get less points. If you're older than that, you get less points, but you can plan accordingly. The most points are available at the moment, short of having Caymanian relatives, for investment in real estate. Anybody that has invested more than 40% of their last 5 years' income in Cayman Islands real estate is guaranteed 30 points for that investment. If you do charitable work, every year that you do 35 hours of charitable volunteering, you will get 1.5 points. So through all of these mechanisms, you will get points for your savings. They want to make sure that you are financially secure, that you're never going to become a burden on the society, that you have your own health insurance, etc. All of these things all come into play to secure people enough points.
What is the maximum number of, what is the minimum, number of points that I need to get?
Anybody that gets 110 points under the current regime is guaranteed permanent residence.
Okay.
Which is effectively the same thing that you would get if you spent $2 million on a house today and gave the government $100,000. So there's a shortcut or there's the long road.
Very interesting. When was the points system developed? Because the reason why I ask is because I keep comparing Cayman Islands with Dubai. I used to live in Dubai for a while before, and talking with Steve, we both agreed that there are two very, very different places in terms of the way people are and the cultural aspect. And it seems that despite the fact that Cayman has 138 nationalities, it manages still to keep the culture alive and kind of people adapting to the ways of Caymanians and not the other way around. And I'm curious whether you think that this point system has been designed in such a way to make sure that you're only taking in the right set of people, the right qualifications.
The reality is that the criteria have been simplified and simplified and simplified over the last 15 years. When it was first brought in 15 years ago, it was much stricter. For example, it used to require you to have at least $50,000 in savings to get maximum points for being rich, but they reduced that to asking you if you have more than 5% of what you earned last year. So somebody that's earning $100,000 a year only needs $5,000 to get maximum points for being rich. So through the reduction of that sort of thing, they give everybody maximum points for their occupation, no matter what they do. So these things have caused some weakening of the process. I think that that was recognized actually in our elections last week, and consistent with, frankly, what every country in the world seems to be doing right now. I think the Cayman Islands government is on the verge of making some changes to ensure that our systems, whilst welcoming everybody that we need and ensuring that we can have a growing, vibrant economy, is going to be more selective as to who can come and be here. Right? In the discussions that I'm having with people, the analogies between universities are often discussed. And one of the things that people will say is, which is the better university, the one that lets everybody that wants to go there come in, or the one that chooses which of the people that want to go there can come in? And I think Cayman is going to move more in that direction. We do hold our culture very precious. Our culture isn't always the physical, touchy culture that you can see and taste, although, of course, we do have our own cuisine and our own accents and things of that nature. But there is an inherent friendliness in our society because we are of the scale that we are. People can do business on handshakes. They can trust one another because all you have is your reputation in this small society. And if you lose your reputation, then your life will not be good. We treat people fairly and with respect, and give people the benefit of the doubt. But we want to maintain that air around us.
And that's what I find fascinating. And because you mentioned that, you mentioned actually in an article about the recent government proposal regarding the changes in immigration law, though you didn't seem very pleased about the changes in the immigration law. So I wanted to ask, is this a new change, or it's that change that you're talking about?
It was a proposed change by the government that lost the election. And one of the things, because I'm 55 years old now, so I get to have things that irritate me, and I have a position on things. I think that people should lead by example. And what the government was proposing was a series of measures that would impact the private sector, but which the government didn't have to follow. And this ranged to everything, to the school fees, to the educational requirements, the licensing requirements, the health insurance requirements, the pension requirements, all being imposed on private sector citizens, but that government workers weren't going to have to do. And my main displeasure was the concept that they would pass laws that they thought were so inconvenient and difficult to comply with that they would exempt themselves from those same laws. So I made it very clear that no such measure should meet with the approval of the Caymanian people, in my view. And it does seem that the Caymanian people, at least in part, have agreed and have concurred. And I am hopeful that and optimistic that the new government that we have is going to approach things in a very business-like, very fair, very transparent manner. in the adjustments that must be made for the good of the community.
What do you think? How is that going to impact an expat looking for residency in the next 5 years, for example, in the Cayman Islands, you think? Because you said it's going to become tougher, right? In
Well,
what ways?
more selective. I think it depends on who you are. I think any society, we have to admit, however reluctantly, that what we are doing is social engineering. So we have to choose: do we want educated people or ignorant people? Do we want wealthy people or poor people? Do we want diverse people, or do we want everybody from the same place? Do we want investors or people that will just be tenants? We have to decide on each of those continuums which one is better for our society and for our people. And the reality is that education, health, youth, and commercial acumen, competitiveness, are all things that any society will prefer.
Absolutely.
And if we are to say that we have a limited number of seats every year, we will be taking measures to make sure that we will give those seats to those persons who, from our perspective, are most deserving and, bluntly, can most help our country advance in its ambition to meet its potential. I frankly believe that we can and should be, in fact, perhaps already are, somewhat of the Singapore of the Americas. And we don't want the factories. We don't want enormous numbers of people. We want to keep a clean, vibrant, friendly community where we look after our people, that we recognize that not everybody will have the wealth, etc. We will make sure that there are opportunities for people to pull themselves up, but at the same time, ensure that we can function competitively in a modern world and adapt to changing economic and geopolitical pressures.
Some people might make the argument that Cayman Islands, by becoming stringent in its regulations to welcome new people into the country, they might encourage businesses to seek, let's say, residency and shelter in the Caribbean neighbors, for example, the Bahamas. And I wanted to discuss a little bit about your opinions in terms of Cayman, the advantages of Cayman over the neighboring countries. Bahamas is one example, but not the only one. What do you think makes Cayman Islands stronger from a residency and business perspective?
We can't ignore the fact that we are a colony of the United Kingdom, but were never colonized. So we don't feel oppressed. We were settled. We decided to be British. Nobody made us become British. And so we have remained with the UK. We have the Union Jack proudly in the corner of our flag. And whenever we face a challenge that we maybe can't handle internally ourselves, we have the full weight of the British government available on speed dial to help us with whatever problem we might have, whether that's part of our education system, our waste management system, our sewage system, whatever it may be. So we can access friendly, world-class governance to help us with our own challenges at any time, because we did not throw off the shackles of British imperialism as it gets described elsewhere. This also means that local people don't have a particular disdain for Europeans, which unfortunately can be quite common around the region. We have also had a very, very diverse culture for a very long time. Our demographics have always been diverse. We want to keep them diverse. During the earliest part of the 20th century, there was nothing for Caymanians to do here. We used to go and catch turtles and sharks, and we grew coconuts, and we made rope, and we sold it around the world. But that wasn't really enough to sustain an economy And so our men who were exceptional seafarers went away to sea in ships. And they did that generationally. And the main ports that they would ship out of were places like Port Arthur, Texas, Mobile, Alabama, Tampa, Florida. And there they would meet local ladies and marry them and start to have children, and then move back to the Cayman Islands with those people. And so our culture, and meanwhile, when they're on the ships, they were in the engine room working with a Ukrainian and an Italian and a Chinese person, and they picked up lots and lots of things from all around. They would go into Tokyo Harbor, Singapore, London, and they came back to the Cayman Islands with all this knowledge and all this story, and that really forged the foundation of where we are and who we are, and why it is that we are able to be so more welcoming and appreciative and understanding of what is really going on. Our neighbors didn't have that experience. Our neighbors had oppressive slave societies where a very small minority of wealthy white people uh, kept a great majority of poor black people in the most horrific conditions for centuries. And when those countries attained their independence, there was that historic built up angst uh, that couldn't help but have consequences down the line. It is part of the reason why I today live in the Cayman Islands and had to leave Jamaica as I was as a young child. We Safety is an issue. The Bahamas are absolutely beautiful. In fact, Jamaica's absolutely beautiful. Jamaica is the most beautiful island I've ever seen. But if you have to retreat but into a caged compound with armed guards to live your life, something has gone wrong. I don't think people should have to imprison themselves in order to have some sense of normalcy. And so, whilst life at Key and places like that in the Bahamas are absolutely remarkable, there is no openness to the society. There cannot be, because it is simply not as safe as it could or should be, and perhaps as safe as it once was. And that is ultimately an enormous driver. We also have levels of communication that our neighbors don't have, levels of healthcare, levels of education available, the quality of our roads, the quality of our cell phone service. All of these things now place us very differently from anywhere else. And I'm confident you'll be hard pressed to find a grocery store anywhere on earth with the full range of quality produce that we have. I must admit I have a fondness for crème de Gruyère, and I was able to get some yesterday just in the grocery aisle. I don't think there's a Caribbean country where I could get crème de Gruyère on a supermarket shelf.
Very interesting. You've touched on a lot of points that I want to circle back to. Certainly, the foundations that Cayman was built on is really, in my opinion, makes it a unique safe haven right now, even amongst all of the other ones that are out there. Primarily because it was not colonized, as you said. It was part of the British colony, but not colonized. I wanted to ask, it used to be just, I think 60, 70 years ago, it used to be associated to Jamaica. It was sort of a vassal state to Jamaica, officially speaking. And after Jamaica separated itself in the 60s, I think, then the road or the paths of these two countries is radically different. Jamaica is now extremely poor and very unstable, despite its independency, whereas Cayman Islands is it's becoming wealthier and wealthier. Do you think that the difference between these two trajectories, it's due to the fact that it's associated with the UK empire or kind of governance, or that's something that is owed to the local Caymanians and the way that the local government has kind of handled the social structure so far, the social engineering, as you said.
Look, I think it's a bit of both. The UK has never imposed its will on us, save in three material respects. One is it forced us to abolish slavery. We did have slavery, and it forced us to abolish it. Two, it forced us to abandon the death penalty. And three, it forced us to give an equivalent to marriage to same-sex couples. In our 300 years of domination by the British, that's the only three things they've ever imposed on us.
Oh, I didn't know about the third.
So they are like a parent to an adult child. They provide us with guidance and are quite gentle in how they help us to find the right solutions ourselves. The Caymanian people, there is no better way to learn than from experience. And if you can learn from the experience of others, that is a very good thing indeed. Then you don't have to make the mistakes yourself. In the 1950s and 60s, if a Caymanian wanted to go to a library, a university, or even see an electric light bulb, they would have to go usually to Havana or to Kingston or to Nassau to experience those things. And they saw how in a very short period in the 1960s and early 1970s, the economies of those three countries were absolutely destroyed, really by politics, by jealousy, and by corruption. And so we have stayed very, very clear. You started by suggesting that we were a part of Jamaica. I think it has to be remembered that in that period, Jamaica wasn't a country. Jamaica was a British colony that had a bunch of British civil servants sitting in Kingston looking after the Cayman Islands and the Turks and Caicos Islands. And that was really the relationship. That relationship itself had to start because after the British cut off the slave trade, the Cayman Islands sent a schooner and went and kidnapped 7 Sambo Indians from the Mosquito Coast of Central America and brought them back here as slaves. That caused a near war between the British and the Mosquito Indians, who were the British allies against the Spanish. And so the British had to send a warship here, free the 7 slaves, and make apologies and reparations to the Sambo Indians. And to stop us from doing anything crazy again, they told the civil servants in Jamaica to watch what we were doing. And that's really how our connection to Jamaica came about, and really is all that it was, is they were guardrails on us rather than directly ruling us. And only until 1963, when Jamaica decided to go independent, the Cayman Islands said emphatically, no way. Our histories, our cultures, everything is different. We're going to try and do it our way. And I think we've been successful. History's been kind to us.
I do think so. Steve Hawley, your friend, he often mentions that Cayman has kind of enjoys the best of both worlds. So it has its independence, and it has its independence. However, it has a kind of a big guy that can call on if something goes wrong. So there's
if something, yes, things like our defense, our international relations, all of that sort of thing are handled very well by the British. But we are a self-governing territory. We have our democratic elections every 4 years, and we have an excellent civil service that, frankly, trained along the British model, does seem to work very well.
What do you think are the future prospects of Cayman Islands as a society moving forward, looking at the developed world in general and the US and the UK primarily? They are in decline from a debt and economic perspective, as we can see. However, Cayman, it's just starting out. It has a history of richness of just less than 50 years, probably. So how do you see it in the future?
I would hope that we will develop a sovereign wealth fund, and to protect our future even more. We operate a budget surplus in general terms. Our budget's about $1 billion. Immediately prior to the election, we looked like we were going to dip into negative territory in our budget, but we don't have any enormous borrowing or anything like that, and we have great flexibility in that regard. I am particularly excited by the benefits that technology brings to the Cayman Islands. We are sitting today in different countries on other sides, on opposite sides of the world, as are many in the audience, I'm sure. And we can communicate entirely effectively and efficiently in real time, which ultimately means we don't have to be, none of us have to be in New York or Toronto or Moscow or Paris or Rome to conduct our business. And particularly in a world that is becoming increasingly fragmented geopolitically at the moment, it is nice to have these neutral places where everybody gets on with one another, from which and through which international trade can be accomplished. And that is where Singapore has thrived, Hong Kong has thrived, Dubai has thrived. Cayman is another such place. We have the advantage that we speak English, we have the rule of law. It's so safe the police generally don't carry guns. It is a nice, good place to be, and one that is friends with everybody. We're very much in the Western sphere. I'm going to not pretend that we're not, but that doesn't mean that we can't trade freely and amicably and respectfully with the wider world, and provide a conduit through which the wider world can correspond with one another. Technology is particularly important because it is allowing the C-suites of international business to actually move here and to make this their center of gravity. And the sheer wealth that is associated with that, the income generation, the ability for those crumbs to be particularly large that are falling off the table into the community here, is all very, very positive. And our entire tax system is based on consumption. We simply charge a tariff. What President Trump is attempting to do in the United States is in many ways an emulation of the Cayman Islands tax system. If you want to buy something, a portion of the cost of the import of that, and everything has to be imported, is paid to the Cayman Islands government. And so the more people that we have here who are consuming, the more money the government gets. And so it's a very positive cycle in that regard.
Okay, but at the same time, you need to balance out the amount of people coming in
So we sometimes joke that blessed are the Ferrari drivers, because the tariff that you pay on your small Honda might only be $2,000, but the tariff that you pay on your small Ferrari might be $200,000. They both use the same amount of infrastructure. So if we can balance the society, please, they don't have to be Ferraris, and if they are, please don't paint them green. But if we're going to have Ferrari drivers, they will be paying a disproportionate amount of money into the economy that the government can then use to help the Caymanian people that find themselves in need of assistance.
Okay. My final question, I'll wrap this up with this question, and if anybody else here has any questions, please share it in the public chat, is do you see any other benefit that you'd like to highlight to the Cayman Islands as a tax haven jurisdiction, as opposed to Singapore, Dubai, Switzerland, or any other tax haven? In other words, do you see that there is more benefits to the Cayman Islands as opposed to these jurisdictions? And it's fine if you say no, but
I think it comes down to quality of life. I think we are unrivaled as a place in which to found and raise a family, for example. That ability. I love Dubai. I have to say, I'm very fond of Dubai. But in July, it's too hot to go outside. You can't play outside with the kids. In Singapore, some of my clients have moved here from Singapore. They complain about the palm oil fires in Indonesia and the impact that that has on the quality of the air that they breathe. It is simply Switzerland, somewhere that I go to most springs. I love, but I love it for skiing, or I love it in September. Sorry, in August. I don't, when it's raining and cold. I don't like Switzerland. I can't walk around Geneva every day. I can't eat in the restaurants there every day. Cayman seems to be that unique Goldilocks place from which to base yourself, where the weather is good all year round, and where you have the communications and the flights, so that if you feel like going skiing in Colorado or on a wine tour of Tuscany, or you want to traverse the Amazon rainforest, you can. You can still see the world. You can enjoy all the world has to offer in close proximity to us. We treat the plane to Miami like a bus. We go there shopping. It's literally a shopping trip. It's the big city we will go to if we need to. But actually, with technology, even those trips are diminishing because we can just order online.
I couldn't agree more. I do. Cayman offers one of the best quality of life plus standard of living, as Steve often says.
Yeah, but we
Nick,
are very, very
thank you. Thank you very much for your time. We are approaching the top of the hour, as we mentioned, and I don't want to take more of your time. I see that there are no questions in the public chat, so I'll just wrap this up here. I am looking forward to meet you in person in our upcoming Cayman Islands event. Yeah, thank you very much for joining.
You're most welcome. I wish everybody a wonderful evening wherever you are, and hope that we will see you in Cayman one